Black CEO, mocked for using black card at five-star hotel freezes $3, 8B, merger on the spot. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The lobby glowed with quiet wealth marble floors, gold sconces, and a piano playing something too elegant to notice. Then came the sound that sliced through it all. Ma'am, this card looks expired. Every head behind the counter turned. A white clerk held her black card between two fingers, like it was contaminated. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. Behind him, two colleagues tried and failed to hide their laughter. Aisha Morgan didn't speak, not yet. The kind of stillness she carried wasn't fear, it was calculation. Maybe you have another one? He added, voice sweet like a knife wrapped in sugar. Something more realistic? The chuckle that followed wasn't quiet. It wasn't private. It was meant for the lobby, and it landed. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Aisha. She stood there, dark suit, travel-weary eyes, no jewelry, no entourage, just calm. The kind of calm that makes arrogant people uncomfortable. Across the counter, the young concierge whispered to her supervisor. That's a black card, right? The unlimited tier? The man smirked. Honey, anyone can print a black card these days. He leaned in closer. We've had a few. Creative types come in thinking color means credibility. Laughter again. Soft, cruel, confident. Aisha's fingers brushed the marble counter once, a single motion that steadied her breath. She'd seen this scene before, years ago, different hotel, same tone, same assumptions. Behind her, a couple whispered, "Can you believe that?" The man replied, "They always try this trick." The front desk manager joined in now, his voice projecting authority and bias in equal measure. "Ma'am, this establishment reserves the right to verify all high-value transactions. We'll need a call from your actual bank." He turned to his colleague. "Security on standby." The phrase hit like a siren. People glanced up from their drinks. The pianist stopped mid-note. Even the air conditioner seemed to pause. Aisha exhaled slow, deliberate, as if releasing decades of insult in one breath. The clerk waved her card once more. "Until we verify, we can't honor your booking. Maybe you'd prefer a standard suite? Something within reason." For a moment, silence stretched across the room, thin as glass. Aisha's voice finally came quiet, but edged with steel. "Within reason?" she repeated. "You might want to define that." He smiled, mistaking restraint for surrender. "Of course, ma'am. Company policy." Her phone buzzed in her hand. She didn't check it. She didn't need to. She already knew what it was. Another deal confirmation. Another empire moving quietly in her name. She looked him in the eye and said evenly, "Keep the card." He blinked, unsure if it was sarcasm or surrender. Aisha turned slightly, lifted the phone to her ear, and said the words that would change the temperature of the room. "Carla, it's me. We're done here. Freeze the Horizon deal, all 3.8 billion. Effective now." And just like that, the music stopped for good. The manager's smirk lingered as Aisha walked away from the counter. She didn't rush, didn't argue. Her silence trailed behind her like a shadow that made the entire lobby colder. Security hadn't arrived yet. The clerk whispered something about fraud checks, while the woman in pearls near the lounge gave a pitying glance, the kind that says, "I knew it." Aisha paused near a tall window. Outside, the city pulsed with neon and rain, every drop sliding down the glass like a timeline she'd lived before. For most people, this was just a hotel. For her, it was a test, and the result had already been written. The truth was simple. She hadn't come to rest. She'd come to see if this place was ready for her signature, a partnership that would decide whether Horizon Hotels stayed alive or folded into her empire. But they didn't see that. They saw a quiet black woman with a plain suit and a card they assumed was fake. Her assistant, Carla's voice, echoed faintly from the phone, still in her hand. Aisha? Confirm, are we freezing the deal? Aisha didn't answer. Not yet. Her eyes drifted across the lobby to the marble columns, the gold signage, the framed awards on the wall. Awards she had funded. Investments her company had underwritten. She could almost hear her father's voice again, low and tired from decades of being dismissed. They'll never see you coming, so don't warn them. Just arrive. Back at the counter, the clerk still held her card like evidence. Security will handle it, he said to the manager. She's probably not even a real member. Not our problem, the manager replied, straightening his tie. People like that always bluff. People like that. The phrase hit with surgical precision. Aisha's jaw tightened, not rage, recognition. The young concierge from before shifted nervously. He opened the booking screen again, scrolling fast. His voice trembled. Sir, her name's on the priority ledger. A. Morgan, executive level. When did? The manager turned sharply. You checking my system without permission? I just thought maybe. Don't think. Follow protocol. He closed the screen with a sharp tap. The sound echoed like a verdict. Aisha walked back to the desk, every heel click deliberate, steady. The kind of walk that makes space clear without a word. The room noticed, even those pretending not to. She stopped in front of the manager again. You said my card was expired. He folded his arms. That's right. And until we verify... Good, she cut in, tone quiet but sharp. Verification's important. You might want to verify who you're speaking to. The young concierge swallowed hard. He knew. He'd seen the name. But the manager laughed a brittle, hollow sound. Ma'am, don't make this difficult. Our time's valuable. So is mine, she said. Then softer. In fact, it's worth about $3.8 billion. He blinked, unamused. You're joking. Her gaze didn't waver. Does it sound like I am? Behind her, someone murmured, Wait, 3.8? But before the whisper could spread, Aisha placed her phone flat on the counter. The screen glowed with a single open document, a contract header that read, Horizon Acquisition Agreement. The manager leaned forward. His smirk finally faltered. You said I don't belong here, Aisha said quietly. You might be right, because I don't belong under this roof. I own it. If you want. The young concierge exhaled relief and awe tangled in one breath. And just like that, the room wasn't silent anymore. It was reverent. The marble counter had turned into a stage. Every word now echoed louder than it should. The manager's face stiffened. He stared at the glowing document on Aisha's phone, then at her trying to decide whether to double down or step back. Pride made the choice for him. That's a nice PDF, ma'am, he said, forcing a smile. But anyone can mock up a contract. We deal with imposters every week. He waved for the clerk beside him. Tyler, get the guest log. Let's see what name she's pretending to be this time. Tyler hesitated. Sir, maybe we should do it. The young concierge Eli stood frozen at the far end of the counter, eyes flicking between them. He knew what was coming, and it wasn't protocol, it was habit. Aisha watched quietly as Tyler opened the system. The screen's reflection painted his face pale blue. He scrolled, stammered, and finally looked up. There's an A. Morgan here. Executive clearance. Checked in for the penthouse suite. Eli's shoulders relaxed slightly. But the manager didn't flinch. That could have been entered manually. Maybe she hacked it. Laughter rippled from behind the desk. One of the female clerks, Lauren, leaned forward with folded arms. You can't just own a hotel because you say you do. That's not how it works. X. Aisha turned her head toward her, slow and deliberate. You're right, she said softly. It works when you build one. The air thickened. Guests nearby started whispering. A man in a navy blazer took out his phone, pretending to check messages but recording instead. Lauren scoffed. We'll see what security says. She pressed a button under the desk. A dull click echoed. Within moments, 2 security officers entered the lobby, one tall, one broad, both trying too hard to look calm. Ma'am, the taller one began, we've been asked to verify your identity. Could you step aside, please? Aisha didn't move. And if I don't? The manager answered for him. Then we'll have to escort you out until your information checks out. It was the same sentence she'd heard 100 times in different rooms, different accents, always the same tone. You don't belong here. Her voice stayed even. You're making a mistake. Doubt it, the manager said. People like you pull this all the time. Eli cut him off, voice shaking. Sir, stop. She's... Enough! The word cracked through the air like a slap. The pianist, who'd quietly resumed playing, froze mid-note again. Guests turned fully now. Every phone camera found its target. Aisha's eyes dropped briefly to the polished floor, her reflection looking back calm, composed, unbroken. She thought of the first deal she'd ever closed, a run-down motel off Interstate 85. The owner refused to shake her hand, told her, "You people don't last in this business." She'd smiled then too, just like now, and signed anyway. That motel had become the first horizon. Her voice rose, clear but never loud. This conversation is being recorded, correct? The manager frowned. What? Lobby security cameras, she said. Company property, which means my company's property. Lauren's smirk faltered. Tyler's fingers froze above the keyboard. You're bluffing, the manager said. Aisha picked up her phone again. The screen blinked with a message from Carla. Audit feed connected. Live access confirmed. She tilted it so he could see the timestamp. Still think so? Silence. The taller guard lowered his radio. Sir, maybe we should pause this. But pride is louder than reason. No, the manager barked. If she's who she claims, she can prove it. Aisha met his gaze without blinking. I already did. You just didn't recognize proof when it walked through your door. With you, buddy. And for the first time, the crowd didn't laugh. They nodded. The balance had started to shift, not in volume, in gravity. The silence after her words didn't fade, it deepened. The lobby, once filled with quiet luxury, now felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. The manager's confidence cracked first. He tugged at his cufflinks, pretending to be calm. Ma'am, this doesn't have to get complicated. Aisha didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on him, steady, unyielding. Then came the voice that broke the stillness. I saw it, Eli said softly from the far end of the counter. Heads turned. The young concierge looked pale, his hands trembling slightly over the keyboard. Her name's in the system. Executive tier. Verified at 6:02 p.m. by corporate access key. Lauren hissed. Eli, don't. He took a breath anyway. You told me to ignore the top-tier list, but I didn't. It's right there. She's legit. The room shifted small, almost imperceptible. A few guests stopped recording and simply watched, as if something fragile was unfolding. The manager's tone turned cold. Do you enjoy your job, Eli? I enjoy doing it right, Eli replied, voice quivering but loud enough for everyone to hear. For the first time, Aisha looked at him not with gratitude, but recognition. She knew that look, the face of someone realizing silence was no longer safe. The manager leaned in closer to Eli, his whisper sharp enough to cut. Step away from the counter, now. Eli didn't move. Lauren slammed her hand against the keyboard. Fine, you want proof. Let's check the reservation log. Her nails clicked furiously on the keys. The screen flickered, then froze. Systems locked, she muttered. She must have done something. The accusation hit the air like a spark in gasoline. A guest, an older man near the bar, stood up. That's ridiculous, he said loudly. You've been humiliating her for 20 minutes. Thinks they're taken by this Rickwood. Lauren turned, flustered. Sir, this doesn't concern you. It does, he said. It concerns everyone who's watching. Phones went up again. The quiet murmur turned into a low current of outrage. Aisha's voice came calm, almost compassionate. You don't need to defend me, sir. Let the truth do its work. But Eli couldn't stop now. He turned the monitor toward the crowd, showing the bold line of text glowing across the top. A. Morgan Owner Level Access Horizon Partnership. Lauren gasped. The manager's jaw locked. That's internal data. You just violated confidentiality. Eli stood taller. No, I corrected a lie. The younger security officer, the broader one, took a step forward. Sir, I think we need to stand down. Not yet, the manager snapped. Aisha watched them, calm as ever. but something new glimmered in her eyes. Not anger, not satisfaction, inevitability. She turned slightly toward Eli. "You've done enough. Go back to your station." Axe. He hesitated. "But they—" "Go," she repeated softly. "Let them finish the story they started." Eli obeyed, retreating slowly, but the energy he'd released was irreversible. The room had taken a side. Lauren's voice cracked, desperate. "You people always pull this—" "Finish that sentence," Aisha said, voice like glass. Lauren froze. Her mouth opened, then shut. The words died before reaching air. From the back of the lobby, the pianist began playing again, quiet, hesitant, like someone trying to fill a moral void with sound. No one told him to stop this time. The manager adjusted his tie again, but it no longer looked like authority, it looked like armor. He spoke slowly. "You think a couple of lines on a screen prove ownership?" Aisha leaned forward, voice lower, sharper. "No. Ownership proves itself. You're standing in it." The piano faltered. Someone whispered, "She's right." Dollar. "I have a Gaza." For the first time, the staff behind the desk didn't look at Aisha like a problem, they looked at her like a mirror. And none of them liked what they saw. Lauren's last words hung in the air, unfinished like a match struck but never lit. The manager's voice came next, brittle and sharp. "Security! Remove her from the lobby!" The taller guard hesitated. The broader one didn't. He stepped forward, voice clipped. "Ma'am, please hand over your belongings and step aside." "One." Aisha didn't move. "On what grounds?" He faltered, glancing back at his boss for instruction. The manager filled the silence. "Fraudulent identification, misuse of corporate credentials, and—" He reached for the phone to call someone higher up. That was the exact moment his hand brushed her wrist. Not violent, not long, but it was enough. The sound that followed wasn't loud, just a soft, collective gasp from the crowd. The piano stopped again. Even the air shifted, as if the building itself refused to breathe. For Aisha, time didn't slow, it folded. She wasn't standing in a hotel anymore. She was 16 again, in a small-town lobby in North Carolina. Her Sunday dress smelled faintly of starch and lilac soap. She'd waited 2 hours for her parents to arrive, sitting quietly with a travel bag in her lap. The clerk behind the desk had said, "This area's for guests only." When she tried to explain, they called security. A uniformed man took her arm, the same grip, the same tone. They led her outside and locked the door. The rain had started then, too. Back in the present, her hand stayed still under the guard's touch. She didn't pull back. She didn't need to. Her voice returned before anyone else could speak. "You just made this physical," she said softly. The guard froze. The manager forced a laugh. "Oh, come on. No one's hurt. Let's not dramatize." "Dak double ooze." Aisha lifted her chin, her tone cutting through the marble quiet. "You think dignity is drama?" Someone in the crowd murmured, "Say that again." She took one step forward. Every inch of her posture changed, not aggression, not defiance, command. "When you put your hands on me," she said, "you didn't just touch a guest. You touched the brand your company is begging to survive under." Lauren scoffed, but her voice wavered. "You're bluffing." Aisha turned toward her, eyes steady. "Am I?" Her phone buzzed. Carla's name flashed again. She tapped once, put it on speaker. Carla's voice came through clear and crisp. "Miss Morgan," legal audit confirmed. "Video feed active. Do you want to proceed with termination protocol?" The words termination protocol sent a ripple through the staff, confusion, then dread. The manager barked, "You can't just—" Carla's voice cut in. "You should check your employee dashboard, Mr. Grant. You've just been suspended pending investigation for discriminatory conduct." He stared at his phone. The notification glowed red, access revoked. Gasps filled the lobby. Lauren stepped back, whispering, "What is this? Who are you?" Aisha's gaze didn't soften. "I'm the woman you just accused of lying her way into her own hotel." The younger security guard lowered his radio, ashamed. "Ma'am, I'm sorry." She nodded once. "Then step aside." He did. The broader guard followed, hands trembling as he backed away. Aisha turned to the manager, who still stood frozen, phone shaking in his palm. "You wanted verification," she said. "Now you have it." Her reflection shimmered on the marble floor, calm, centered, unbroken. The same girl who'd once been escorted out now stood in a building she owned, surrounded by witnesses who finally saw what power looked like when it didn't shout. The manager's voice cracked, small and hoarse. You set us up." Aisha replied. "No, I set a mirror down. You built the scene yourself." And for the first time since she'd walked in, she smiled. The sound of that smile, quiet, unhurried, spread through the room like an aftershock. The manager still stood frozen behind the counter, his authority dissolving grain by grain like salt in rain. Aisha didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm had gravity now. It pulled every eye toward her, every breath into silence. "Carla," she said, still steady, still on speaker. "Initiate horizon internal lock." "Confirmed," Carla's voice replied from the phone. "All branch terminals are suspended. Their system is frozen as of this call." The clerk beside the manager gasped as the computer screen blinked black. The monitor rebooted to a single corporate seal. "Horizon Group access denied." "What the?" Lauren stepped back, her heels scraping against the tile. Aisha didn't look at her. Her gaze stayed on the manager. "Every digital record of this franchise, every file you've touched, is now under legal review." "You can't do that," he snapped, panic cracking through his voice. "I already did." The words landed without force, but they carried weight like a verdict that didn't need shouting. The younger security guard leaned toward his partner. "She's serious, isn't she?" "Looks like it," the other muttered, throat tight. Aisha moved around the counter, slow but deliberate. Every step echoed like punctuation. The manager instinctively stepped back. "You said earlier I didn't belong here," she said. "Now I need you to listen carefully." She stopped beside him, voice low but unwavering. "You're standing in one of 12 properties my company rebuilt from bankruptcy. I gave this place a future when your last employer walked away. I gave you a job when no one else would hire you. Everyone." He opened his mouth to speak, nothing came out. "And in return," she continued, "you chose arrogance over decency." The lobby stayed motionless. Even the pianist had stopped pretending to play. Carla's voice returned, calm, efficient, surgical. "Miss Morgan, would you like me to pull their compliance reports from the last quarter?" "Yes," Aisha said, "and flag every incident marked customer misunderstanding. Those are the ones that sound polite, but hide bias." "2. We're the dated." Her tone never rose, but the entire staff flinched as if she'd shouted. Lauren whispered, "This isn't real." "It's very real," Aisha said softly. "You just never thought it would happen in daylight." The older guests near the bar stood a little taller. The young couple by the elevator clutched hands. No one moved, but everyone understood. The storm had turned. Aisha's phone buzzed again, Carla, crisp and calm. "Confirmation received. 4 prior complaints involving discriminatory language from this location, all attached to the same management ID." The manager's skin went pale. "Those were misunderstandings." "No," Aisha replied. "They were warnings." Her eyes softened, not with mercy but clarity. "You ignored every single one. So I'm teaching you the final lesson. Silence isn't safety, it's permission." Carla's voice came through again, lower this time. "Ma'am, would you like me to proceed with termination notice?" Aisha looked around the lobby. The staff had lowered their heads. Guests watched in stunned reverence. "Not yet," she said. "Let them listen first." She turned back to the manager. "You wanted verification. You'll have it." She pressed a button on her phone. The lobby speakers clicked to life. Carla's voice echoed across the marble. "This recording is now under legal audit by Horizon Enterprises. All discriminatory language, gestures, and protocol breaches from this evening have been logged." Each word reverberated through the hall, factual and final. Aisha set her phone on the counter, face down, as if the act itself closed a chapter. "You said my card was expired," she said quietly. "Turns out, it was your time that ran out." The silence afterward wasn't peace, it was judgment. And in that silence, everyone knew. The woman they'd mocked hadn't come to prove herself. She'd come to measure them. The marble gleamed beneath her shoes, catching the light as if the room itself had decided whose side it was on. No one breathed. The air trembled between disbelief and awe. Aisha stood behind the counter. Now the position of authority had shifted without permission, without noise. Her phone, still face down, vibrated once. Carla's voice filled the room again, echoing from the ceiling speakers. Miss Morgan, the legal division requests your verbal confirmation for identity disclosure before proceeding. Aisha picked up the phone slowly. Her eyes swept across the lobby at Lauren's folded arms, the managers shaking hands, the staff shrinking behind their monitors. Then she said, calm as a verdict, confirm identity, Aisha Morgan, Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Group. The words hit like thunder, muffled by velvet. It took 3 full seconds before anyone moved. Then gasps, the soft crash of a dropped pen, a choked whisper. She's the CEO? Carla's voice continued, precise and unhurried. Acknowledged. Horizon Group, parent company of this franchise, now assumes full operational control effective immediately. The manager's face went blank, drained of everything but disbelief. No, that can't be. It can, Aisha said, and it did. Eli, the young concierge, stared at her as if watching a myth step into daylight. Ma'am, you own Horizon? I built it, she answered simply. Lauren stumbled back. You walked in here dressed like what? Aisha interrupted, her tone even, surgical. Like someone you could dismiss? Lauren couldn't finish. Her throat closed around the word. Aisha took a step closer to the counter, voice low but clear enough for every camera in the room. You told me my card looked expired. You mocked the very symbol of credit of trust while standing under a brand I created. You judged me by appearance, not presence. Her eyes met the manager's. And that's the difference between having power and being near it. He tried to recover, stammering. I didn't know who you were. You didn't need to, she replied. Respect isn't supposed to depend on recognition. Behind her, the guests started clapping, hesitant at first, then steady. Not applause for victory, but for clarity. Carla's voice returned, authoritative and final. Miss Morgan, termination authorizations are ready. Proceed, Aisha said. The staff's phones buzzed in unison. On each screen, access revoked, effective immediately. The sound of incoming notifications overlapped like distant thunder. Lauren's face drained of color. The manager gripped the desk for balance. You can't, this isn't how business works. Aisha turned toward him one last time. No, she said. This is how accountability works. If you know. A ripple of murmurs spread across the lobby, disbelief melting into awe. Eli stepped forward, hesitant. Miss Morgan, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. She nodded once, warmth breaking through the steel of her composure. Don't be sorry. Be different. For a moment, she let silence do the rest. Cameras recorded. Guests whispered. The piano player, unsure whether to play or pray, simply rested his hands on the keys. Aisha looked around the space, her space, and smiled faintly. You know, when I built Horizon, I promised myself one thing, never to let the people behind the desk forget who they serve. She reached for the black card still lying on the counter. This, she said softly, holding it up, was never the test. You were. The manager's lips parted, but nothing came out. Aisha turned toward the crowd. Justice doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives certain. Getted. And with that, she slid the black card back into her wallet, tucked the phone into her blazer, and walked away, leaving behind a lobby full of people who would never again mistake calm for weakness. The moment the doors behind Aisha swung shut, the room seemed to exhale slow, disbelieving, hollow. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, like glass cracking under pressure, everything began to fall apart. The manager, Mr. Grant, fumbled for his phone, tapping wildly. Each attempt met the same cold message. Access denied. He tried again, voice trembling. System error! It's a glitch! Lauren hovered beside him, clutching her ID badge like it could save her. Maybe it's temporary, right? Maybe she can't really... But then her badge flickered red, a single pulse of light, and went dark. Effective immediately, the device screen read. 2 words that sounded like a verdict. Eli stood near the far desk, frozen between pity and fear. The younger security guard stared down at his radio, hearing nothing but static. The entire hotel network had gone silent. Carla's voice still echoed faintly from the ceiling speakers measured. neutral, merciless. Notice of operational suspension has been filed. All managerial permissions revoked. Horizon Compliance Team, arriving within the hour. Grant slammed his hand against the counter. This is insane! She can't just walk in here and... Eli cut him off quietly. She didn't walk in. She arrived. The words landed heavier than they sounded. Guests began stepping back, forming a loose half-circle around the counter, not out of fear, but distance. The power dynamic had inverted, and everyone felt it. Lauren's voice cracked. We can fix this. We can apologize. Eli shook his head. Apologies aren't keys. Nothing opens those systems again. She turned toward him, tears welling in disbelief. She ruined us. No, he said softly. We did that ourselves. Erections. The older security guard leaned against the wall, rubbing his temples. I've seen shutdowns before, he muttered. Never like this. Whole buildings under her command. Grant stumbled forward, his arrogance collapsing into desperation. Somebody call corporate. Someone higher up. Eli replied. She is higher up. For the first time, the truth fully landed. Grant looked around at the guests filming, the staff frozen, the marble gleaming like judgment. Please, he muttered, voice cracking. We didn't mean... The piano player, still seated by the grand piano, whispered the words everyone was thinking. You just didn't think she mattered. Lauren's tears finally fell. She sank into a chair, whispering, We laughed at her, right in her face. Eli didn't respond. His silence was heavier than scolding. Carla's voice returned, smooth and final. For record purposes, this location is now under direct corporate supervision. Remaining staff are to vacate within the hour. His livid body. The last remnants of denial drained from their faces. Grant looked toward the doors Aisha had walked through, his lips trembling. We were just doing our jobs. Eli's reply came quiet, almost kind. Then maybe it's time you found new ones. The automatic doors opened again, not for her return, but for Justice's quiet arrival. 2 members of the compliance team entered, suits, tablets, no smiles. One spoke with detached precision. Please surrender all credentials. This location will undergo immediate audit. Lauren obeyed first, sliding her badge across the counter like an offering. Grant hesitated, his fingers clenched around his ID, knuckles white. Then, slowly, he let go. The card landed on the marble with a sound too small for what it meant. The compliance officer nodded once. Thank you. You may collect your personal items. 8. Grant looked around the lobby that had once been his domain, his reflection warped in the marble, small, trembling, irrelevant. Guests whispered. Cameras kept rolling. The story was already leaving the building with Aisha. Lauren turned to Eli, voice breaking. Will she ever forgive us? He shook his head. She doesn't need to. She already replaced us. Outside, through the glass, the rain had stopped. Neon lights from the street flickered against the lobby windows, bending across Aisha's reflection as she stepped into a waiting car, unbothered, untouchable. The manager watched her go, his last whisper dissolving into the hum of closing doors. She never raised her voice. And from somewhere deep in the silence, someone answered, She didn't need to. The car door closed with a soft thud, the kind that ends a chapter without ceremony. Outside, the city hummed sirens in the distance, rain dissolving into steam on the asphalt. Inside, silence wrapped itself around Aisha like armor. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. Through the tinted glass, the hotel stood still, a tall, glittering reflection of everything she had once been told she couldn't have. Carla's voice came through the car speaker, gentle now. Audit team confirmed. All staff processed. Corporate channels cleared. It's done, ma'am. Have fivered. Aisha nodded, eyes still on the blur of city lights. Good. A pause. Then softer. Make sure Eli's retained. He did the right thing when it counted. Yes, ma'am. Already handled. The car eased into traffic. Neon streaks slid across her face like passing memories, years of being underestimated condensed into light and color. She thought of the girl she used to be 16, standing in the rain, told to leave a lobby that smelled of money and perfume. Back then, she'd swallowed humiliation like medicine. Bitter, necessary, unforgettable. Tonight, she returned the dose, not out of revenge, but balance. Her phone buzzed. A message from Carla. Board approved full acquisition. Horizon is now 100% under your control. Aisha smiled faintly. Full circle, she murmured. From the corner of her eye, she saw the black card on the seat beside her, catching light from a passing billboard. A symbol once used to test her worth now looked like a mirror, quiet, reflective, eternal. The driver glanced up through the mirror. Rough night, ma'am? She met his eyes briefly. No, necessary. He nodded, as if he understood. The car stopped at a red light. Outside, a young black woman in a raincoat crossed the street, juggling a laptop and a coffee cup. She looked tired, determined, invisible, the kind of woman no one thanks for holding the world together. Aisha watched her pass and whispered under her breath, "Keep walking." The light turned green. Inside the lobby they'd left behind, the compliance team sealed the office, the piano still untouched. The manager's voice, now small, echoed faintly in the recordings. She never raised her voice. A sound destined to become legend among the staff who'd witnessed it. Online, the videos were already spreading captions blazing across screens. Black CEO humiliated at her own hotel, fires entire staff in minutes. Comment sections overflowed with disbelief, admiration, denial, and pride. But Aisha wouldn't read them. She didn't need to. She leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. The city lights painted faint gold lines across her face, scars of brilliance. Voiceover, low and cinematic. Power doesn't shout, it remembers. It rebuilds, it redefines. The car turned onto the highway. Wind whispered through the edges of the window, soft like applause. For years they mistook silence for weakness, her inner voice continued. But silence isn't surrender, it's preparation. She opened her eyes, gaze steady, alive with purpose. The skyline stretched ahead, tall, illuminated, unbothered, and in that reflection, her story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about return. She whispered, barely audible. Justice doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to arrive. Then, as the car disappeared into the night, the screen faded to black, only one line remained. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard.